Okay, so walk me through the day that the bridge was struck by the ship. What were you guys doing like that morning? How long had you guys been working together at that point? Can you walk me through that day?
Sure, I'll start.
Go ahead, Bob.
If I can fill in. Mike was interviewed and hired on May 2nd, which was a Friday. Called him up Friday afternoon and told him to report to work on Monday. So technically he was hired on the 2nd. Came into work Monday, got his equipment and his gear, dive shop, showed him around the office, told him what our responsibilities were, got him all geared up, went to the tackle shack in Pinellas Park and got us some equipment and stuff. Explained to him what our responsibilities were. Spent some time diving at the Skyway with Mike. Prior to May 9th, we did a couple of dives at within 200 yards of that location where the bus fell in the water. We were inspecting the fender system, what was left of the fender system. The fender system was a big issue. It wasn't protected as it should have been. Not in my wheelhouse, way before my time.
What do you mean when you say fender system?
By the time I started in 1974, the timber fender system that was built on that structure to protect both of them had been demolished by ship traffic. There was very little protection.
Boats?
Absolutely. There was no protection to speak of for any large vessels, as was obvious. So we spent a couple of days diving out at that location and a couple of days before that. So actually, by May 9th, he had only been with me 2 or 3 dives and actually 5 working days. And Mike put it very, very well when we were being interviewed by the Times. That's like somebody now joining the New York Fire Department on September 6th and then walking up the stairs on September 11th. Mike had no idea, neither did I, that morning on Friday, May 9th, when we got to the yard. When we got to Pinellas Maintenance Yard, DOT yard at the intersection almost of 49th and Ulmerton, it was pretty miserable out. It was rainy. That was what the forecast was. I had a portable radio on my hip, called the office, told them we were going to step out. We hopped in the car at about 7 o'clock in the morning after we met, and we knew we were going to have a long day because we were headed out to the Skyway after the weather cleared. We stopped down at a local restaurant called the Bunny Hut. We were going to get some coffee and some breakfast and stuff, and at 7:34, give or take, the girls came out from the back and started talking about the Skyway got knocked down, and they were pretty excited. Sounded pretty real. It was kind of a bad joke, and not a unusual one for the guys, to always give us the business, or me the business, about, this bridge got hit and this one went down, and you got to do this and you got to do that and stuff. So it was kind of like teasing me. So when they came out, my first thing was, okay. They brought the radio out, and I heard, I think it was Al Ford, the guy in the sky, and he was on the radio and he was talking about it. He said the Skyway had been hit and it's down, and they were serious.
I remember they had TVs going too.
We could
see some live footage from the restaurant of the accident.
Yeah, so we hopped in the car, went back to the yard. The boss was on there, Ron Hazley, if he was already on the radio. We knew we were headed out there. It was our duty, our responsibility to investigate any waterborne accidents. That was our position description. That's what we did. When we realized it was for real, nobody needed to tell us to get out there. We knew we had to get out there. So we scooted back to the yard. It took us less than 5 minutes. We were out of there before 8 o'clock with our gear, because we were headed down that way anyways.
And the boat.
We hopped on Alberton, and at that time they were just on and off completing the bypass 275 from up around Alberton and on down south to the Skyway. There were portions of it were asphalt and portions of it were still dirt. We had a 16-foot Boston Whaler with a tank rack, 6 tanks, and threw all our gear in there and hooked it up to the back of the station wagon and zipped as fast as we could down the partially built interstate, zipping on and off when we couldn't go around any further due to the construction. I think we got off someplace around 5th Avenue North or something.
I think that's right. I remember the high school.
I'm pretty sure we probably ran the curb a couple of times and maybe even jumped the curb a couple of times. Maybe even cut some corners a couple of times. We got down there as fast as we could. We got down to 54th Avenue South, and the police barricade was up. We identified ourselves, and they waved us through. We ran down to our normal launch location, which was Skyway Jacks.
Yeah, O'Neill's.
The marina, O'Neill's. We got dressed. We launched our boat. There wasn't much traffic there at that time. It was just us. We were still kind of early. And started to head out from Skyway Jacks to the bridge. At our location, once we got out of the mouth of the small...
Philippi Creek.
The small marina. Once we got out of the small marina and got out there, it was completely fogged up. It was very, very foggy. I had been out there numerous times, and it had a difficult time navigating out. Very thick fog.
Yeah, couldn't see the channel markers.
I mean, from the reports, like watching the documentary, they're talking about how it was like hurricane force winds and just downpouring rain as well. That was obviously way earlier.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yep, it was dead still when we got out there because the fog was thick. It was a fog bank, almost solid. It's a coincidence because it broke so that we could actually, first time we saw the bridge was where the current Skyway Memorial is.
Okay.
Was the very first time is where that memorial is today. It was where we started to see that.
Yeah, right there.
Also where the Blackthorn Memorial is. You know, it's almost like fate or something that was there. From that location, we could see the bridge. I could see that the bridge was down. I could see that the boat was still stuffed up underneath there. We headed out there, and the obvious location to start, as far as I was concerned, was at the end of the bridge, because that's more than likely where we would start an inspection, would be to go ahead and start measurements and stuff like that, rather than just drive around and look for something to do.
So
we had a plan. Start at that location and start documenting what we had. We were on an accident investigation, so that's what we were doing.
But when you guys first got in the boat and put it in the water, had you guys communicated with anybody about what your mission was or what your objectives were?
No, other than it's an accident investigation. Get out there as fast as you can. On the way down, listening to the AM radio, we overheard that there was a bus that did go off, and potentially 30, 40, 50 people were in the bus. You know, we did hear that. We did hear that there was traffic that had driven off the bridge, so we knew that there were victims. We knew that there were cars and vehicles and trucks and people underwater. Yes.
So what were you guys like talking to each other about? Like what were you guys going to do once you got there? Like, what was
I
your
don't
plan?
think we were doing much talking. I think it was more just trying to get down there and
Yeah, it was really hard to grasp the whole enormity of the situation until we actually got there and could see what was happening. I think when we saw these students from Eckerd College in the water and their boats out there, of course, we were already familiar with who they were and what they would normally be doing. But when we could tell that they were over the site of the accident, probably over the side of that bus, and that they had divers in the water at the same time working above the dangling steel superstructure that was still in place above them that could potentially start dropping at any second and crash right down on top of them. I think we felt it was our duty to relieve them, to move them away from danger and assume that responsibility ourselves. We're the state inspectors. These kids had no business, I don't think, being out there doing what they were doing, although they were well-meaning, good intentions, but taking an unnecessary risk for for nothing, I thought.
I agree in large part with Mike. I don't think the kids had any say in where they anchored up. I'm pretty sure it was the person who was responsible for the rescue operation. Let me say this before I go any further. Mike and I completely understand that if it wasn't for those kids and that equipment being there, that we would have never been able to accomplish what little we could under those circumstances. It would have been very nice to have a little more cooperation from the man in charge, but the kids were fantastic, all of them. There was only one person that was being a ding-dong, and he was quickly ignored. We never asked them to leave that location. We simply asked them to back off a little bit so that we could take that responsibility. Like Mike said, my opinion was they were directly in the flight path of anything coming off of that bridge. Anything. We only went under there after I picked up my radio and asked my supervisor, who was up there, Ron, who was a bridge inspector, if it was safe and if it was okay for us to go under there. So we had communications with topside people when we were out there. And he did say, yeah, Bob, you got it.